The overwhelm you are feeling now is temporary. The overwhelm, the feeling that you're not going to get it, the feeling that it's all too much, it's a big deal. I get it. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm just saying let's put it in the box of things that don't live forever. Let's put it in the box of things that, given a little bit of repetition, you will overcome. Welcome to Your Business is Not Your Boss. I am your host, Geoff Welch, and I help small business owners overcome overwhelm and replace overthinking with intentional action. What is up? Welcome to episode 36 of Your Business is Not Your Boss. I am your host and small business coach, Geoff Welch, and today we are going to talk about the way that the overwhelm seems overwhelming, seems like it will last forever and it's going to consume you, and yet in almost every situation, it is temporary. Okay, we're going to dig into that here in just a second. First, I do want to remind you that if you're experiencing that overwhelm, if you're feeling that sense of, man, there's a lot coming at me, there is too much to process at once, or maybe you're feeling stuck, there's so much that is happening in your world that you don't know which direction to go, you don't know which thing to pick, you're having trouble being decisive, you're having trouble actually making forward progress. Well, have I got the thing for you? Okay, I have a free PDF called the Anti-Overwhelm Playbook that is going to help you address some very specific things and give you the ability to start acting differently today. Okay, you can read it. It's short, it's quick, but it's got some zip to it, right? It's got a little bit of like a little kick to it. So you're going to be able to take a few minutes of investment of saying, I'm gonna read this thing and turn that into forward motion today. All right, just go to geoffwelch.com/playbook to get yours now. Okay, let's talk a little bit about overwhelm, and to do that, I'm going to tell you a little story. My wife Nicole and I, we've been working on a little project together, just around our house. I don't want to set that up to be some grandiose thing that it's like, and it's coming your way. No, this is just for our house. She has wanted to add something to our front porch. Our front porch has a bench that sits on it, and our front porch has ginormous chimes. I mean, the biggest chimes I've ever seen. They sound beautiful. They make a visual statement, but she is increasingly becoming someone who wants chaos, visual chaos on the front porch. I'm more of a minimalist. I am more inclined to be like less is more, and she is more inclined to be more is more. So we've been looking for something we can agree on to augment what exists on our porch, to liven it up a little bit. And so we decided that we are going to create these wall hanging planters, right? So basically it's a flat piece of wood that a mounting, basically a little planter gets attached to the front of it. And because we are also not particularly blessed with green thumbs, we're just going to put some succulents out there. We're going to find some aloe plants and some other sort of things that don't need a lot of attention. And so we were out shopping. We were out, looking for parts and pieces and trying to, come to terms on what the plants would be like, what kind of materials we would use. And we decided that since we were working really hard on this project, we would go to grab some ice cream. So we go to the ice cream shop, and while we're standing in line there, I overhear, now this ice cream shop is effectively being run by teenagers, right? Like that's kind of how it works, right? So there are a number of youthful folks that are in here, and one of them says to the other while they're doing their work, and I mean, you're 2 feet away from these people. It's not like I was eavesdropping, from around the corner. But one of them says to the other one, I'm really nervous about my driver's test next week. And I didn't remark, I didn't say anything, but I sort of chuckled internally because as somebody who has been driving for like 100 years, I barely remember in fact, I don't remember what it was like to be nervous about your driver's test. I'm sure that I was, but I have no recollection of taking the test. I know I had to parallel park, maybe the last time I parallel parked. But I don't remember anything about it. I don't remember doing it. I don't remember worrying about it. And yet, that's a common thing to be concerned about, right? In fact, my daughter just a little over a year ago got her driver's license, and so we went through that with her, and I can recall being nervous for her, right? And when you're learning to drive, when you're starting that process, those things are overwhelming, right? I've got to learn all this stuff. I've got to take this test. I've got to pay attention. I've got to make sure that I'm doing the right things in the right ways at the right times so that I get the right amount of points that I need, or I don't get points reduced, or whatever it is. That can be an overwhelming experience, right? And yet, you're going to keep doing that thing over and over again. And I mean, I've literally driven hundreds of thousands of miles, and I'm not even a prolific driver. But over the course of years, I've driven hundreds of thousands of miles. And I may go out and grab some lunch later. There's not a moment when I think about what I'm going to get for lunch or that process where I'm going to even consider for a moment that driving is an overwhelming part of that equation, right? Deciding on lunch, that may be overwhelming. I may not feel wholly equipped to do that. But the driving part is just a thing that you do. It's just second nature. It's just an activity that happens over and over and over again, and you don't think twice about it. Many of the things, certainly not all, but many of the things that you experience in your business that feel overwhelming are a lot like that. They are temporary experiences. And I bet you can, if you had to sit down for 1 minute and write down as many things as you could think of that used to be overwhelming but are no longer overwhelming, you may need more than a minute because, again, it's hard to remember that things were overwhelming sometimes, right? But I bet you could come up with quite a list of things that you just do every day now that at one point were very intimidating, at one point were very overwhelming. And I think that it is a good thing to remember because I have yet to feel overwhelmed in my life when it didn't seem like that would last forever, right? I have yet to have that experience of overwhelm where I didn't feel like I don't know how this ever goes away. It seems like it will always feel this way. And yet it almost never does. It is very rare that there is something that is continually overwhelming that is a part of your, small business life, right? So I do want to offer that reminder. Another sort of side part of this, I guess, is I've been working on my camper. And, my wife and we bought this camper at the end of last year, and we've done a few tweaks to it. And I checked some things out at the end of last season, and the furnace worked just fine. Took it out the first time this year, did some tests. The furnace doesn't work at all. Can't get it to go. So I have a friend who works in that kind of world, right? Working with heating and cooling. And while this is a different kind of system, the principles are the same. He was able to come over, and we were able to identify what the issue is, swapped out a part. It works fine now, right? And as I was putting the furnace back into where it goes, everything in a camper is small. Everything in a camper is, there's just no room around it for anything else. As I was reconnecting some of these vents, it was like this, for my arms, this like contortionist exercise, right? How to get this thing I can't see because it's inside of a structure, how to get this thing lined up, how to get it in the right spot so that I can then twist it and do what I need to do. It was an exercise in patience because in that moment, it feels like I'll never, ever get this. I won't be able to do this, right? And I've been actively working on reminding myself that when I have that experience, when something seems like I'll never get it, that I always do. I may not become the most perfect at it. I may not be the greatest in the world, but I trust that I can figure out how to get this thing attached. I really believe it's possible. And what I've discovered on a project like that, and to come back to this building, this decorating project, I guess, with my wife and I, we've got 8 of these things to do. They all have to be assembled in a certain way. And the first one takes the longest, right? The first one is the one where you say, I have to figure out how to do this. I have to take all the measurements, and I have to, figure out where I screw this in and where I drill that hole and where we hang the hangers and all these little things that turn something that seems like, well, you just attach this stuff and you throw it on the wall. Well, how high is it going to sit on the wall? And how, where do the hangers need to sit on the back so that it ends up in the right spot? All these things have to be determined. And so the first one, I would say it's very, very close. The first one took as long to assemble as the other 7 combined, because the other 7 were repeating something. And by the time I got to number 8, it was fast, right? Because I've remembered all the measurements. I know, exactly how to do the thing because I've done it 6 or 7 times before at this point. These things seem overwhelming at first. They seem like they're going to take forever. They seem like we're never going to get them. And yet what we need is the repetition. What we need is to say, instead of judging myself and instead of feeling like I should already have it, this should feel comfortable immediately, or I don't want to do it. To have that beginner's mindset to some degree, to say, it's going to feel weird for a minute. That's a natural part of it. I don't have to like it, but I understand it's part of the process, right? I'm not doing something wrong because it feels weird. This is just how it works. It feels a little overwhelming. It feels like it's a lot right now. But as I do it again and again and again, it becomes easier and easier and easier. And I want to map that to things like documenting a process, to delegating work to someone else. In the beginning, a lot of these things seem overwhelming. And it seems like, how will we ever? How am I going to figure it out? The first one didn't work the way that I hoped it would. All is lost. And yet, you need to go through that to be able to figure out how to do it right next time. Very rarely, and this is a trap for me, wanting to plan enough so that the first draft is perfect, right? That is not a reliable way to do good work, to make something remarkable. Planning is useful, and you certainly don't want to forego any kind of planning. But I think that it's pretty short-sighted to say, if I plan enough, I'll get it perfect the first time. Generally speaking, in nearly every case, what has to happen is you have to do it. You have to make the thing. You have to go through the process. And then on the other side of it, you're like, okay, yeah, I know 3 things I would do different next time. And now you can do that. I know that as I have explored, I got a stand-up paddleboard this year, and we bought this camper last year. There are a few things that we have started doing. I started playing pickleball. We've started doing where what I want to know what the right paddle is, and what's the best camper, and what sort of, what's my preference for a stand-up paddleboard. I want to be able to do that and to know what someone who has 5 or 10 years of experience, I want to be able to know what they know without ever having done it myself. And the problem with that is you can learn. I mean, I watched a ton of YouTube videos. Don't get me wrong. I'm doing whatever research I can to get myself closer to knowing those things. But what someone on YouTube says might not be the thing that works for me, in terms of they say what you want is this kind of thing. And then I have that kind of thing and I use it and I'm like, that's actually doesn't work for me. We almost always have to do the thing to learn what our preference is, to learn the best pathway for us. And so that feeling of overwhelm sometimes prevents us from stepping into it. or at the very least, we experience that overwhelm and we feel like maybe I shouldn't have done this, or this isn't working. When in reality, we are learning. We are in a part of this process where we are learning how to do something. We are learning to adapt. You are not going to document the 50th thing you document the same way you documented the first one. You're going to learn some things. And like I work with people and we talk about best practices, and then we massage those things based on what their world looks like, right? It doesn't work the exact same way for every single person. And so having someone to help you get a little closer is really wonderful, right? I love to be able to do that for people. But they are still going to find ways and efficiencies and things that work best for them in their situation that we couldn't have predicted on day one. But they have to do it in order to get there. So the overwhelming sense of, I don't know how to document this process. I'm struggling to delegate. Like, I don't know. I just want to not do it. Or it feels gross, and so I am not enjoying this in any way, shape, or form. You might not enjoy every bit of it, but if you can take away the part where you say, it feels gross, so I must be doing it wrong, and just say, it's an awkward moment. We just got to get through this, right? We just got to get through the part where it doesn't feel fluid. And pretty soon, it is going to feel more natural. Pretty soon, it's going to feel a little bit like driving, where you likely don't think about it. You likely don't compute regularly all the things you need to do when you're driving. I mean, I guess those computations are happening, but they're happening way back in a part of your brain that allows you to think about the meeting you're going to along the way. I mean, most of us have had the experience of getting someplace and wondering how we got there, right? Because doing the thing was so natural that we were able to consider other things and to run down different rabbit trails while we were still doing all the mechanical things we needed to. If a deer had run out in front of us, we would have immediately shifted into a different level of awareness, right? But when everything is normal, our brain is just doing it, right? It's just making it happen for us. You didn't do that when you were 14 or 15. We start driving at 14 here in Alaska. I know other places it's a little later, but you get your learner's permit at 14 and you're going to spend a little bit of time being real bad at it. Being real bad. That's the process. So the overwhelm you are feeling now is temporary. The overwhelm, the feeling that you're not going to get it, the feeling that it's all too much, it's a big deal. I get it. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I'm just saying, let's put it in the box of things that don't live forever. Let's put it in the box of things that, given a little bit of repetition, you will overcome. Given a little bit of repetition. So I want to make sure these things aren't too disparate and seem separate from one another. The process of building these planters for the front porch, that was a process of trying to figure out how to do the first one and it taking a long time. There's a lot of things to consider, but as I did 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it gets faster every time. And by the end, it becomes simple. Okay? That's the same thing we're talking about here, right? The more you do a thing, the simpler and the more natural it becomes. Okay? I hope that will give you the ability to be a little more patient with yourself. And again, if you are feeling at any time like the overwhelm is just a little too much, like you need some tools to help you navigate that, to help you deal with that in a healthy way, and really to like turn down the chaos a little bit so that you can get unstuck, make progress, take intentional action, stop overthinking, replace that with intentional action, right? Then I hope you will go to jeffwelch.com/playbook and grab my anti-overwhelm playbook. It's there for you. It is free, and I promise it's a quick read, and it will help you get started today. It'll help you feel different and approach your work differently today. Okay, that's it from me. It feels gross in the moment. I understand that, but just remember that it is temporary, and do not forget, your business is not your boss.